God morgon och välkommen till en ny vecka, en ny måndag och till Advania och Jamfs webbinar om hur ni kan skapa en tryggare mobil arbetsvardag med Advania och Jamf. Jättekul att ha er allihopa här och jag hoppas att vi kommer kunna väcka er denna måndag. För er som inte jobbar på Advania, nu ska vi se, stäng av den där med. För er som inte jobbar på Advania så kan det vara bra att veta att många av mina kollegor var på kick-off i fredags. Så att, är det lite trött i chatten så ska jag göra mitt bästa för att väcka dem där också. Men idag så, eller först ska jag berätta vem jag är. För er som inte har träffat mig tidigare, jag heter Simon Binder, jobbar som lead architect på Advania Knowledge Factory. Jag är Microsoft MVP, vilket ju kanske är lite konstigt i det här Jamf-sammanhanget, inom både Microsoft Intune och Azure Virtual Desktop. Men jag har också fått förmånen att föreläsa på Jamfs konferens för 6:e året i rad och pratar mer än gärna om Jamf och Microsoft tillsammans. Det kommer vi komma in på lite senare, men vi kommer fokusera på det Jamf gör idag. Och ni får ju under hela det här eventet ställa frågor till mig och mina kollegor. Det finns en Q&A i den här webbinarplattformen där ni hemskt gärna får ställa frågor, så ska jag och Adam svara på dem här under dagen. Ni kan även chatta i chatten här till höger, gissar jag att det är för er också. Och sen kan ni ju absolut höra av er senare till antingen mig, någon av mina kollegor på Advania eller någon av våra kompisar på Jamf. Men när jag har kört det här introt färdigt så kommer jag lämna över till Adam som kommer byta språk till engelska och som kommer att berätta om dagens hot mot de mobila plattformarna och enheterna som vi har där. Därefter, när Adam har pratat färdigt, så kommer jag berätta vad Advania och Jamf gör tillsammans och hur vi kan hjälpa er att säkra era mobila enheter och era Apple-enheter och faktiskt en del andra enheter nu för tiden också. Och därefter kommer det finnas gott om tid för att ställa frågor och få svar på de frågorna som ni har. Så jag uppmuntrar er till att ställa frågor. Jag kommer svara så mycket jag kan under tiden Adam pratar och sen så kommer jag att samla ihop de viktigaste frågorna i slutet. Ni får jättegärna ställa frågor på både svenska och engelska. Vid behov så översätter jag dem till Adam. Men nu är det dags att köra igång. So I'm very happy to have you here, Adam, and I look forward to listening to what you have to say about the current threat against mobile devices. So with that, I'll hand over to you, your presentation, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just present my screen for you all. Okay. Excellent. Simon, just checking you can see my screen okay?
Yes, I can see your screen. No problem at all.
Perfect. Excellent. Yeah, pleasure to be speaking with you all this morning, and thank you for tolerating the English. Believe me, it would be a lot harder for you to understand if I tried to speak Swedish. So obviously I'm from the UK. I work for Jamf. Jamf do have a number of my colleagues based in Sweden, but the reason why I'm talking to you today is I work on our security strategy here at Jamf for EMEA. And I guess what does that mean? What is it that I do? I'm also a father, and I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And when my son asks me, what do? I try to explain what working on a software company's security strategy means to a 5-year-old. And I kind of settled on that I tell people stories. And these stories are often how the good guys protect themselves from the bad guys. So hopefully you'll enjoy this story this morning. It is focused on mobile devices and how, firstly, how important they are, the benefits and use cases that they bring, which I'm sure everyone is very familiar with, but also from a security point of view. A big part of what Jamf does is threat research, and we have a dedicated team that is solely focused on researching threats or vulnerabilities or methods that attackers are using to target specifically mobile devices, both iOS and Android. So I'm going to be sharing some of the findings and insights from that team amongst what else we're seeing in the industry. So I myself have been working in mobile for nearly 12 years now. I'm a big power user of mobile devices, and Jamf as well. Like, we have several customers that are becoming heavily reliant on mobile devices. So whether that's we have a number of healthcare organizations now that provide their nurses or clinical staff with iPads that they can use when at a patient's bedside. We have pilots regularly using their mobile devices or iPads whilst in the cockpit, whilst on flights, or retail associates in stores. Not just your kind of typical executive who has their phone to respond and answer to emails. There's a lot more that we are utilizing these devices for these days. And we're noticing it, the trends that we're seeing within the industry. The majority of enterprise endpoints are mobile. I think that the bottom two stats here are really important. So there was a study last year done by Forrester that found that employees who regularly use their mobile devices saw their efficiency increase by 34%. And another interesting stat was that 80% of IT executives now believe their users cannot do their jobs effectively without their mobile device. So I guess imagine the scenario: you give your users a mobile device and then suddenly tomorrow you take it away. How many of those users would suddenly see a dip in productivity and not actually be able to perform their jobs as effectively as they are now able to do so? So we know that mobile is great for business productivity. Users love using these devices. And as I mentioned, they now take up the majority of our endpoints that are under management. But when we look at security budgets, this is where there's a little bit of a gap in terms of the adoption and investment gaps. So there's about roughly 10% of your average security budget, if that, is allocated to mobile security. Some of you on the call may have a higher or lower percentage than that, but yeah, if these devices are the main endpoint of choice, but only a small percentage of security budgets going to them, then it's inevitable that there's going to be some blind spots. So mobile devices are a prime target for attackers because we use them all the time, as I've mentioned earlier. We also access so much sensitive data from these devices. If you think about it, on a typical end user's device, they will obviously have access to their email, probably an internal messaging, probably even an intranet, a CRM system, expenses applications. There's all sorts of sensitive data that is now being accessed through that mobile device. So attackers know that. And from a security awareness point of view, it's generally quite low. So our studies found that last year, at any given point, half of mobile devices are not on the latest version of OS. We know how important it is. Every time that Apple or Android push out an update to their operating system, some more than others, but they are fixing known vulnerabilities and potentially even sometimes known exploits. So we need to make sure that these devices are up to date, running that latest version of OS, just to get the inbuilt security at its most effective point. We also, not just the operating system, what we found is that we have a number of users' devices that are running with vulnerabilities within the applications as well. So that second statistics there is concerning application usage, where maybe they're not on the latest version of the app. And again, we saw recently a high-profile example with WhatsApp, where there was a vulnerability within a version of WhatsApp that was attributed to some spyware attacks. The way to protect yourself against that was to update the WhatsApp application. So again, you need to consider, do we have measures in place to ensure that apps are patched regularly on mobile devices? And there's some other things as well. Like we know that phishing attacks are twice as effective on a mobile device compared to a laptop or desktop environment. So what we mean by that is if the user was to receive a email phishing message and a text SMS-based phishing message, they click on the text message twice as many times as the email if you cross that across all your users. So we know that mobile is potentially a blind spot. And some other examples of how an attacker typically targets mobile device. We've seen phishing as being a big concern. I've mentioned phishing already, and smishing in particular, but it's not just SMS-based phishing. We're also seeing mobile phishing attacks leak into other areas. Maybe it's like a link in a Reddit forum, or users sent a Teams link. Sometimes it could be sort of distributed through that method. Malicious or Trojanized apps. So this is only when a user is downloading apps from outside the official app stores. Obviously, Apple have very strict protections in place for what applications can make it onto the App Store. But if users do start to download apps from outside the official app stores, then that is obviously a method that attackers often use. I've mentioned exploiting outdated operating systems and applications. So as I mentioned, when Apple and Android release these updates to their operating system, they are fixing known vulnerabilities. But ultimately, attackers also are aware that if a device is not running that latest version, they are then susceptible to what has just been fixed. So they often go to exploit devices which aren't on the latest version of OS. Man-in-the-middle attacks, these are slightly rarer these days, where an attacker sets up or tries to compromise a public Wi-Fi, gets a user to connect to that Wi-Fi. But we've also seen other forms of man-in-the-middle attack take place, maybe through getting users to install malicious VPNs to ultimately intercept their traffic. And then mobile-specific social engineering. So we're seeing a lot of this recently, where they're looking to explicitly exploit the mobile user. So QR code based phishing attacks is the big one here. So obviously we are all very familiar with using QR codes. Users are quite happy to scan a QR code as part of their regular sort of day-to-day life, but attackers also are. QR codes are quite easy to set up and to launch these type of attacks. So in France last year, there was a widespread QR code based phishing attack launched on the train system in France. So for those of you that have ever had to travel via rail in France, you might know that they provide on-board catering and food, which you can scan a QR code in front of your seat and it will get delivered to your seat. So you order it all through that method. What attackers were doing is they stuck a sticker over the official QR code, then easily created quite a simple website which mimicked that of the official catering website. And every single passenger who scanned that QR code didn't receive their money and gave away their financial information. They didn't receive their food, sorry, and gave away their financial information as a result of that. So we really need to watch out for these specific social engineering attacks. And it's not just what we've seen. There's plenty of really interesting news stories and articles and reports on mobile. So yeah, if you are interested in any sort of further data on the mobile threat landscape, Jamf, we provide a blog. I'll also share some information post this of what we do on things like LinkedIn to create awareness around the mobile threat landscape. So what we know is obviously there is a concern with the use of mobile devices. We're aware that attackers are targeting it. I'm sure businesses are aware, but also what's interesting is that now compliance frameworks are increasingly becoming aware of the reliance on mobile devices and the importance of making these devices secure. So a number of leading compliance frameworks globally now have some form of mobile specific requirements. They all incorporate mobile in some capacity. Some are slightly stricter than others. For example, in the UK, where I'm from, Cyber Essentials is the kind of standard accreditation that most businesses try to achieve. The main requirement is that the mobile device has to be managed via MDM, which obviously is very important. However, we look at NIS2 in the EU or other sort of European-based compliance standards, and there is more of a requirement for mobile threat defense and VPN type controls. So they don't explicitly say you must have a mobile threat defense solution, but the controls and measures that they require are only achievable via a mobile threat defense or VPN solution. So that might be there is a requirement that you have some form of secure access controls. So any device that is accessing company data must be done through a secure tunnel, as an example. Or perhaps they have requirements in place that mean that a device must at all times be on a minimum OS version, which often requires a combination of MDM and sometimes even MTD, mobile threat defense. So again, if anyone is interested in learning more about different compliance frameworks that you are maybe trying to achieve with your organization, definitely reach out, as more than happy to kind of talk around what mobile requirements are there and how you can achieve that with different technologies that are available on the mobile device. So when it comes to like prioritizing what we need to do when with mobile, these are the three main priorities that I recommend, just given my experience within mobile and what we see in at Jamf. So the first one is to leverage and enhance the native security features. So both within iOS and Android, there is a lot of built-in security features. Within iOS alone, I've mentioned already the controls that Apple put around the app stores. So what apps can and can't be downloaded onto the iOS device. If you are only allowing users to download apps from the official app stores, that significantly reduces the attack surface area for an attacker. Same applies for your Android devices. If you're ensuring that devices are on a certain OS version, again, that is going to give you all of the latest security features that these platforms provide. So leverage those and enhance them where you can. We want to then gain visibility into how these devices are being used across the organization. Ultimately, yeah, even your BYOD devices, if they're accessing sensitive data, certainly from a compliance point of view, you need to know which devices are accessing what data and how that data is being accessed if you want to meet any kind of compliance audit or framework. And I guess the third one, and this is probably the most important one that I've noticed, given what my work in mobile security is, you need to make sure that you increase the security without impacting the user experience. I'm sure some of you have had to deal with users, maybe complaints or issues in the past related to mobile phone. For whatever reason, users are very sensitive about their mobile device, especially if it is their own and you operate a BYOD program. So if you try to introduce security tools that prevent the use of the main functions or the benefits of using a mobile device, if they cause any slowdown to data or prevent users from being able to use certain applications, you're not going to get a successful mobile security rollout. So this is really important when looking at any technology, especially on a mobile device, is to have as minimal impact on the end user as possible. So this is where Jamf come in. Now, some of you may be familiar with Jamf for what we do on mobile, but we are best known for what we do on our Mac side. But we are very sort of big in the mobile world as well, which you may or may not know. So Jamf have actually been providing mobile offerings for nearly 15 years, but especially in the last sort of 7 or 8 years, we've really focused on the mobile security element of our service. So we are the only solution that combines MDM, NTD, and Zero Trust Network Access as one offering, and it's purpose-built for mobile. So we're not pushing any existing tools that run on Windows machines to mobile. We have built this from the ground up to run on mobile devices, and this is iOS and Android. We offer user-friendly options. I'll explain some of those in a bit more detail. And there's various other sort of functionality that we provide with our offering. We also have, you'll notice at the bottom right, we have this, we call it JNUC. It's a Jamf Nation user conference where we every year host our customers at different locations. This year it happens to be in Denver. There is a whole host of brilliant announcements, sessions being run on our Jamf for Mobile in particular. Those sessions, if you can't join us in Denver, will be available online after the event. So again, keep an eye out for sort of the latest sessions if you really want to dive deep on any particular parts of our product and tech. But what I will do is I'll give you a little snapshot, an insight into some of this now. So one of the things that we can offer is keeping your devices up to date on the latest OS version. Now, that is obviously pretty standard within MDM. However, what we also have as Jamf is the mobile threat defense element. So we can not only ensure that devices are on the latest version, but we can also ensure that if there is a vulnerable version of an operating system, so say Apple have just released a new version that's fixing significant security gaps, then we can prioritize that update over a standard OS update. So you can see here the user experience. They've got a notification from the app that told them that their device was on a vulnerable version of OS. What we've then done is, and this is all achieved via declarative device management. So this is a framework within Apple, and Jamf have a feature called Jamf Blueprints. So we've automated that this device will be updated with no action required from the end user. So this has all happened in the background. Obviously, we're showing you the settings function here, but the user hasn't had to do anything. The device has been detected as out of date. The OS version has been prepared, and the device will automatically update. The user doesn't have to do anything in order to do that. So we obviously, as I mentioned, have the ability to sort of provide management features of the device, but the security element can coexist with an existing MDM solution. So if, for example, you're using Microsoft Intune to manage your mobile devices, no problem at all. We can coexist alongside that by deploying the Jamf Trust app. So this is a separate application that just powers our security products. The application will get pushed down to the device via Microsoft Intune. At the same time the application gets pushed down, we are configuring some form of network security settings by attaching some additional fields to the existing MDM configuration profile. There's nothing the user has to do for this service to be activated. Again, if the device is managed via Intune, you can push down the service without the user having to do anything. And that then will provide the additional security. So it will detect things like jailbreaks. It will provide insight into vulnerable applications that are running. You then get specific phishing protection, the ability to also apply some form of content filtering and additional Wi-Fi security. And I guess that kind of leads on to the next element here. So you might already think, right, do I actually need that additional application? Like, I've got the device managed with MDM. I've got the settings in place that is always on the latest version of OS. They're only downloading apps from the official app store. Like, do I need additional security? And I guess this is where network security really is required, or you need to be aware of. So majority of sort of attacks that are done on a mobile device are sort of phishing, or sort of what would fit into this category of network security. So we've seen recently in the UK, where I'm from, there's been a number of ransomware attacks. So Marks and Spencer's, a leading retailer here in the UK, they were subject to a ransomware attack, which was linked to the Scattered Spider group. One of the methods that Scattered Spider use is social engineering and phone-based credential theft. So they are trying to gain access to your system via capturing username, password, and potentially even two-factor authentication codes. How do they do that? Via the mobile device. They send users text messages or links. They get the users to log into fake sites. They've then captured their credentials, and they use that then as part of a wider attack further down the line. So if you are implementing mobile devices, you're securing your mobile devices, it's incredibly important that you have some form of network security in place that's protecting against this type of attack. So what we then have at Jamf is we leverage what we consider what we call on-device content filtering. So this is leveraging a framework within iOS. For Android devices, we also have this similar functionality via DNS, where it provides you with this protection against network-based attacks, but in a user-friendly method. So if a user does click on a phishing link, we're not requiring the user to go through a specific browser. So some other security tools on mobile devices require that the protection is only applied to a managed browser. This is applied across the device, no matter what browser the user is using or how they click on the link. We don't require any kind of VPN to be in place. We're simply operating on the device or at the DNS layer. So really user friendly when it comes to that protection, compared to other security tooling that you might have looked at in the past. What we can also offer is insight into vulnerabilities. So again, this is something alongside, if you are a Microsoft customer, alongside something like Intune, where you can get this additional protection if there is a vulnerability detected on your users' devices. So if there's a vulnerability within an application, if there's a vulnerability within an operating system, you get all of this insight into and reporting into that. This information can also be fed into a SIEM solution, so you don't have to worry about sort of managing additional consoles every day if you'd rather have this information in one centralized place. Now, in addition to the security stuff that we are doing from a network point of view, we also have built-in zero trust network access. So again, this is all part of the same Jamf Trust application that I've mentioned earlier. Effectively, what it does is it sets up a dynamic split tunnel on the device, where business traffic is then you would define what is considered to be your sensitive business applications, business traffic, and that traffic is then routed through a secure zero trust network access tunnel. I'll explain in just a second the protocols we use for that tunneling method. But essentially, you can then apply policies that bring in zero trust to mobile. So if you don't want a user to be able to access or connect to sensitive company applications on a device which is out of date, then you could create a policy that states if you want to access Outlook on your mobile device, it has to be on this minimum OS version. If you don't want a user to be accessing company applications if they've downloaded an app from a third-party app store, you can do exactly the same type of method in place. So this is kind of really bringing, instead of conditional access just being limited to Microsoft applications, you can apply this to all your business applications. To have this secure tunneling, this zero trust principles applied to mobile devices. But the key thing here, which is really important, is it's built using a mobile first infrastructure and architecture. So maybe let me show you what that looks like. So for our Android users and for other users, we use WireGuard. So WireGuard is a very modern traffic tunneling protocol. Likes of NordVPN use it, for example, for their consumer VPN. So it's really performant and quick, which once it's installed, works brilliantly. Now, there are, for this particular ZTNA element, there are a couple of steps the user has to take to install the WireGuard VPN. But once they've done that, it's up and running. Now, for your iOS users, what we now have is this feature called Network Relay. So Network Relay is, again, it's leveraging frameworks within Apple's architecture to deliver this zero trust network access, these secure access tunnels, but utilizing the relay technology that Apple make available. And again, we can go deeper on this particular subject if anyone is interested to learn more. Now, let's look at these side by side as a comparison. So the WireGuard VPN, as I mentioned, we can see the VPN profile has been pushed down to the device via the MDM solution. The user is on the device, but in order to access the applications, as you can see, they cannot access their application straight away. What is required first is they have to sign in to the Jamf Trust application with their identity credentials. This is so that we can link the user's identity to that device. Once they've done this, we now know that this device belongs to, let's say it's Simon. So we know that this is Simon's device. Simon can access this application because the identity is integrated and linked. So that is kind of the requirement we have here. So now you can see Simon has been able to access that. Now with Network Relay, because this is all linked to the frameworks that Apple introduced, but also the device attestation that we have within Apple, there's nothing the user actually has to do in order to access company files. The profile is pushed down to the device. We've already at the back end, I linked this device to this user's identity. So immediately the user is accessing company applications. And this is done for a secure tunnel. So that was obviously, there's nothing the user has to do to access those applications. They've the profile gets pushed down to the device. On the back end, you've linked the user to that particular device. You've got a secure tunnel in place, and you've now got ZTNA deployed to mobile without the user having to do anything at all, which has been obviously a big barrier to that. I think what we're trying to do here is this is a philosophy that's really important to us at Jamf. We want to make the most secure way the easiest way, and it's something that Apple do a lot of as well. If you recall, and maybe you will or might know these statistics, but prior to Apple introducing, and obviously Android have this as well, prior to biometric security being the standard way of accessing your mobile device. So before the fingerprint was introduced to unlock mobile phones, only about 49% of iPhones had a passcode. A lot of users just couldn't be bothered to swipe up and input the code, so they just didn't have a passcode running on their device for convenience. As soon as Apple introduced the fingerprint and then ultimately Face ID, that then jumped up to 98%. So now 98% of devices have a passcode by default. So without realizing maybe the user, Apple have introduced a way more secure sort of feature in that these devices will always now by default have a passcode or method of locking the device. But the user also, they're not thinking the security benefit. They're thinking, oh, I can access my phone way more easier now than when I had to put a code in. And that's what we're trying to do with that VPN element as well. Like, we know the most secure way is to have some kind of secure tunnel with zero trust policies in place. But if the user isn't installing that feature and is overriding it some way, that's not the most secure way or not the easiest way. So by making it easy, no interaction required, we've now made the most secure way the easiest way. So hopefully that kind of resonated with you, and that's really what we're trying to do at Jamf for you with our mobile offering. So there's a whole host of other business outcomes you can expect to achieve. We also have a whole host of capabilities that we can offer just on the management and security. I maybe we can answer questions in the chat about how this compares to competitive solutions. I don't necessarily want to sort of talk sort of too much detail on what our competitors do, but hopefully you can see on screen here the kind of additional capabilities that Jamf provides. And actually one of those additional capabilities, and that kind of leads on nicely to the final segue, is what we call Jamf Executive Threat Protection. So this is a slightly different product that is very unique in the market, and there's nothing else that's offering similar to this. So this is an additional security product aimed at really protection against really sophisticated mobile attacks. So what we're talking about here is these type of attacks, which you may have seen in the news, where they often gain traction, like mobile spyware. Now, generally speaking, like I said, spyware is very rare. It's where attackers are often investing millions of dollars to try and find a zero-day vulnerability and exploit it, and then charging often governments or nation states to use that against opposition. We are seeing more of these type of attacks, so they are rare, but we do see a examples of these type of spyware attacks. And the reason for that is if an attacker wants to compromise an individual, they will go after their mobile device. So if your CEO or someone within your organization has access to very sensitive data or could potentially be compromised, attackers will go after their mobile device to compromise that individual. Rather than like if they wanted to compromise the business, they do these wider sort of network-based or supply chain-based attacks. So how do you know if your user's device has been compromised? Now, one of the easiest methods or most common methods is you actually get a notification from Apple themselves. So Apple are quite proactive if they have found evidence of an attack on a device. They are notifying users that they've found evidence of that. But obviously, that isn't always the case or isn't always possible. So there are sometimes some common signs you can look for of a compromised phone, as I mentioned, for a very targeted attack. So it could be that you start to notice that the battery's draining, you can't access certain services on the device, you're not getting updates pushed through. Often it's when you've maybe just returned from a business trip. Sometimes it's really obvious, like you've just returned from a business trip, and whilst you were on that business trip, you didn't have your phone for a couple of hours because it was misplaced or someone took it and then you received it back. Like sometimes it can be really obvious, sometimes it's really difficult to spot. That's what this product is designed to do. It performs deep analysis of a mobile device to be able to tell you. So if you do suspect some form of spyware has taken place or is present on the device, this is the solution that will be able to tell you if that device was compromised. How we do that? We collect logs from the mobile device at a very deep level. So system, kernel, operating system level logs are being collected. We then analyze those logs, which is done either on a cloud or an on-premise instance environment. We have within that analysis, we have known patterns, behaviors, paths that we are looking for, but we also are looking out for potentially unknown patterns, paths that have been are present. So we may know that there's a known IOC for Pegasus, but in this instance, the path is deviated slightly, and it may be like it could be completely harmless, but it could be this is following the same path that Pegasus has used in the past, but now there's a slight deviation, and the model is trained to be able to pick up on that as well. As I mentioned, we are analyzing logs at a deep level, but we are very privacy friendly. So we don't collect passwords, pictures. We're not something like Celebrite, which you may be familiar with, which often law enforcement use to as part of like investigations to like access text messages of a device. We don't do any of that. We're simply looking for device compromise. We're not interested in anything like that. We also have an application. So if users do travel overseas, rather than requiring them to bring their device to InfoSec to perform a scan, we can put an application on their device and a widget that will then routinely scan the device. So if they are traveling to a high-risk country, every time they're sort of in that country, you can push this application to the device and it will routinely just scan the data in the background, upload the logs, and you can get a constant feed of whether the device has been compromised or not. So you might be thinking, okay, like what's the scenario for why I would need this? Like why would I need a tool like this? So Simon very kindly gave me this picture of his house as a way of illustrating the point. So imagine you are building a house. From a security point of view, the first thing you do is you put a lock on the front door. Maybe in this instance, you put gates around the house and you put barbed wire on the gates. That is what a mobile threat defense and mobile MDM solution is doing. These are techniques to prevent an attacker from coming on your device. Every user should have MDM MTD, as every house should have a lock on their front door. It prevents an attacker from getting on there. However, if I'm a nation state and I've got millions of dollars at my disposal, I can easily break into a locked door, or I could find methods to get into that house. That is when you need an alarm system, and maybe if you really want to get fun with it, like laser beams and all of that stuff. That is what Jamf Executive Threat Protection is. It's a method to tell you someone is on your device, this is what they're doing, this is how they got there, and obviously you can then deal with the risk accordingly. Does every individual need an alarm system and laser beams in their home? Probably not. But if I'm an executive and I've got very sensitive data, then you might want to consider that. So hopefully that analogy made sense in the end. You probably thought when you first saw this image, what is this guy talking about? But hopefully that makes sense why you might need the additional protection for certain users beyond that. So that is me. If you are interested in connecting, I'm definitely keen to speak to you all one-on-one via Advania, but also via LinkedIn if you want to connect and keep up to speed with what we're doing there. And I think, Simon, we're going to do some Q&A now.
Yes, thank you, Adam. I will just do a short presentation or short speak about what we at Advania can help our customers with, and then we have Q&A. So if I'll share my screen again, and I will also change language. Så där, innan vi hoppar in i våra frågor och svar så tänkte jag berätta vad vi på Advania och Jamf kan hjälpa er med. Och vi ska börja med det här. Första frågan som många av er säkert ställer är, men vad kostar det då? Och här har Jamf precis släppt 3 nya licensbundningar. Jag förstår att det är väldigt liten text så att ni kommer få de här senare. Den ena är då Jamf for Mac. Vi har ju pratat om de mobila enheterna först och främst. Men Jamf jobbar ju såklart också även med Macar. Och nu kan man då köpa en bundling för $120 per Mac OS-device och år för att få allt det här som Adam har pratat om. Motsvarande för de mobila enheterna är $69 per device och år. Och för er som är lite mindre kunder kanske, då finns det även en som bara fokuserar på säkerhet. Där det Adam har pratat om kan kombineras med till exempel Microsoft Intune. Så att ni kan ha Intune för management och Jamf för säkerhet om ni vill. Men det går också att köra 100% Jamf såklart. För er som jobbar inom skola så har man också det som heter Jamf Safe Internet som är ett webbfilter som går att applicera inte bara på Apple-enheter utan även på Chromebooks, Windows-enheter, Apple och Android och ger er det här webbfiltret som Adam pratade om tidigare och där till listpriset av $5 per device och år. Ni kommer få alla de här bilderna sen och förutom då att vi kan erbjuda de här licenserna till er så kan vi också självklart hjälpa till med hårdvara, hela livscykeln kring det, både Macar och telefoner och iPads. Och vi hjälper också givetvis gärna till med design, implementation, managering och övervakning av de här plattformarna. Ur ett säkerhetsperspektiv och ett hanteringsperspektiv där mina kollegor på Workplace och MSP och vi på Knowledge Factory kan hjälpa till och göra en helhetsleverans för era infrastrukturer på det här sättet. Vi har också möjlighet att hjälpa er med en 30 dagars provperiod. Då behöver ni köra ett möte med oss eller Jamf så hjälper vi er igång så att allting fungerar rätt. Och så kan ni få testa det här i era riktiga miljöer. Så är det någonting ni funderar på, är det något ni vill testa, har ni några uppföljande frågor så får ni hemskt gärna höra av er till mig, till någon på Jamf eller till någon av mina Advania-kollegor. And with that, Adam, let's head into the Q&A. I know that you need to rush off in just a few minutes. But first things first, a question that I'm always asked when we talk about mobile device management is, how do we sell this to our users? What's in it for them?
Yeah, I guess, like I said, we need to make the most secure way the easiest way. So sometimes that is actually... we have customers that their goal is to not actually inform the users they have this additional security functionality in place at all. They kind of, the device just performs as if you'd expect their personal iPhone to perform. I think that is sometimes a strategy, but I think as well sometimes it is about educating the user around the need for these type of functionality. So that might be keeping it simple by saying, look, we have this in place to ensure that if the device is lost, we can locate it. If there is a latest version of operating system from a security point of view, you're running it, just to kind of educate them around that. Also, phishing attacks, another angle I've seen is phishing attacks are obviously trying to steal credentials from a business point of view, but they could also be used to steal personal credentials. You can sort of advise them that this protection is going to benefit if their username and password is compromised. Let's face it, users, it's getting better with password managers, but users probably still have like the same 2 or 3 passwords that they just recycle and use. So if I've got your username and password for your work applications, I could probably guess it's the same password you use for your personal applications. So yeah, there's arguments to doing a lot more around education for users. Like, this is why we need to have this additional protection on the device, the same way you have it on your desktop and laptop. Like we've got this technology in place for your desktop and laptop. Mobile should be no different.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. We have also had a question about our organization is already running Microsoft Intune, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. What is the benefit of adding Jamf to that environment? Not talking about competition, but how would you suggest a customer that already have these things think about Jamf and what you can add on top of it?
Yeah, so I would say Microsoft Defender obviously runs on a mobile device. It does a good job, but its primary design is for your Windows environment. So when it comes to their mobile support, there are certain features which maybe they have gaps, or they're not able to support as much. One of those might be as I illustrated, with Jamf, we use modern mobile first protocols, be it for the network security element, or indeed the VPN zero trust network access element. With Defender, it's a little bit more clunky, it's a little bit trickier to set up and install. The user experience isn't as strong when it comes to that proper mobile security. So we can coexist. There's no issue there. I would say if you are serious about mobile security, you would invest in a mobile first security tool. But Intune is absolutely fine. You have a really strong integration with Microsoft. The way you can deploy our service through Intune is exactly the same as if it was deployed through Jamf Pro.
Yeah, great. I know that you have to run off to another meeting or another event. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this. And I trust that the QR code you share is all good to scan. But if any one of you have any questions to Adam or anything you would like to go deeper into, reach out to me or your Advania or Jamf contact, and we are happy to set up a deeper dive call together with some of our experts. So thank you so much Adam for being here. Tack så jättemycket till alla ni som har varit med här och lyssnat. Tack för era kommentarer och frågor. Och som sagt, vi kommer dela våra viktigaste takeaways, våra inspel, den här inspelningen. Och så får ni hemskt gärna höra av er till oss om ni har några frågor eller vill testa hur det här fungerar i just er miljö. So thank you so much, Adam. To you and to all the rest of you, have a great rest of your week and rest of the day. See you at another event.
Thank you.
Bye.